Hello and welcome. Welcome everyone to our 2020 annual meeting. We are excited that you are all here. My name is Doug King. I serve on the executive committee, currently as the Isaac president, and we are excited to share with you some of our accomplishments that we've done over the last year. Again, we are virtual, so we're just going to ask if you would please keep your lines muted if you're not speaking. It just helps with the feedback. And soon we're going to be taking a photo. So we're going to ask you to get ready, get your smiles ready. We'll be asking you to smile for the photo real soon. And so it'll take just a minute because we have to take a few screens. So again, we're excited. Thank you for tuning in. Hopefully you will appreciate and enjoy what we have seen about all the amazing and exciting things we have done over the last year. So in a moment, we're going to share with you our presentation and all of our slides. And so all of our speakers are present. And so we are grateful and excited to share with you on tonight.
And Caleb, can you let us, somebody's coming in to the Zoom room here. If everybody can get ready for your photo. We have one person coming in, so we want to wait for a quick second. Okay, Caleb will give us directions. We invite you to, if you would like, turn your camera off, if you would like. And then if not, that's okay too.
All right, good evening, everybody. Thank you for being here. If I could just biggest smile you can. It's a celebration of Isaac, everything that have been able to do in 2020. So just smile at your camera, 10, 15 seconds. I'll get through everybody. And then we'll move on from there. So you can start smiling now. Thank you, everybody. It's lovely to see everybody smile.
So again, welcome. It's time for our Isaac 2020 annual report, Building a Beloved Community During Challenging Times. We are so excited to share with you that we are planning our virtual banquet on October 14th. And as you see there, our keynote speaker will be the Reverend Dr. Michael Eric Dyson, professor, author, ordained clergy, and radio host. And so we are so excited that Dr. Dyson has agreed to be our keynote for our virtual banquet on the 14th. I'm going to invite you just quickly for a social media presentation. We're asked that you post, just put hashtag Isaac annual meeting. So we'll ask you to do that as well. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. spoke of the beloved community. He believed that the beloved community, while not devoid of conflict, is free of violence. It is a place in which our deepest values of abundance, equity, community, hope, and most of all, love are infused into our policies and practices so that every individual is held as beloved.
Our covenant. We enter into a covenant agreement. We enter into a deep promise. We promise to love justice and pursue it, As congregations and organizations, we commit ourselves to the pursuit of a just community.
Even now, we are seeking to build a world where hope triumphs over fear, where God's abundance meets the needs of all, where we live in sacred and beloved community instead of dehumanizing isolation, where the sun of equality has risen in a land where love endures.
We journey toward a promised land, a journey hallowed by the blood, sweat, tears, prayers, and witnesses of our ancestors. We covenant ourselves to honor their toil, standing in evidence that it was not in vain.
In all these things, the pursuit of justice, the journey toward a promised land, a path hallowed and well-worn, we covenant ourselves to working together.
We stand together, acknowledging that the journey will be rough, but refusing to let that stop us from forging onward. Together, we raise our collective voice, demanding liberty and justice for all.
Together, we raise our banners and fit them together to form Isaac. We are committed to working together in order to reap the promise of a land of righteousness and peace.
In working together, we will be able the world we desire to create. We enter into a covenant agreement. We enter into a deep promise. We promise to love justice and pursue it. Trabajando juntos, podemos lograr esto. Entramos en un acuerdo de pacto, entramos en un pacto promesa profunda, prometemos amar a la justicia y perseguirla. Gracias.
Thank you for our covenant. I would like to read our member congregation and organization list, and although I can't see you, I'm going to invite you to, as I read your organization, ministry, whatever your affiliation is, feel free to wave your hands so that folks can see that you are a part of that ministry or organization. Christian Church Disciples of Christ, Church Women United, Coalition for Common Ground, or Moms Demand Action for Gun Violence, for Gun Sense, El Concilio, formerly Hispanic American Council, First Congregational Church, UCC, First United Methodist Church, First Presbyterian Church, From the Bible Church, Galilee Baptist Church, Grace Covenant Ministries, Greater Faith Empowerment Center, Kalamazoo Friends Meeting, Lutheran Church of the Savior, Metropolitan Kalamazoo Branch of the NAACP, Mount Zion Baptist Church, North Presbyterian Church, People's Church Unitarian Universalist, Portage Chapel Hill United Methodist Church, Second Baptist Church, St. Barnabas Episcopal Church, St. Luke's Episcopal Church, St. Martin of Tours Episcopal Church, Sunnyside United Methodist Church, Tabernacle Church of God in Christ, Temple B'nai Israel, Unitarian Universalist Community Church, Unity of Kalamazoo, Wesley Foundation of Kalamazoo, Westminster Presbyterian Church, and Westwood United Methodist Church. 30 amazing members. We are so excited to share some of our highlights of 2020. Everything, unfortunately or fortunately, switched to virtual and succeeded amazingly well. The work of Zoom of our 3 task forces, anti-racism, gun violence prevention, and housing was impressive for the entire year. We welcome and grew stronger with new Isaac and GVI team members. We created the Journey to DC for Racial Justice, that virtual event with a total of 7,422 miles. We deepened outdoor engagement through community events. Our virtual public meeting in October was especially and amazingly powerful, with so many elected officials and candidates saying yes to working on anti-racism, gun violence prevention, and housing. Our partnerships brought us 2 huge wins: the city's new housing equity ordinance and the countywide Housing for All millage. And our endowment fund more than doubled. We'd also like to welcome new leaders in Isaac member congregations. From First United Methodist Church, we welcome the lead pastor, Reverend Julie Klein, and pastor of community formation, no stranger to Isaac or to us, Reverend Dr. Matt Weiler, and the Sunnyside United Methodist Church, their new pastor, Reverend Amy Ann Paparella. We are very pleased to have each of you leading parts of our Isaac family. We are grateful for the commitment you bring to our work together of building the beloved community. We are so excited for our new congregation, the Galilee Baptist Church, only new in the most recent sense, but we want to extend a warm welcome to the Galilee Baptist Church family. Galilee is a faith and action congregation with involvement in justice work, voting, racial and economic empowerment, and service in the community. Again, as a founding congregation of Isaac in the early 2000s, under the leadership of Bishop J. Lewis Felton, we were honored to have worked with Galilee over the past years as a valued partner. We have been blessed by Dr. Michael and Dr. Tamara's support for community work around violence awareness. And then we are excited to welcome our newest member of our executive committee. We welcome Al Dixon, who is the co-chair of our anti-racism task force and licensed lay minister at St. Barnabas Episcopal Church, to our Isaac Executive Committee.
Hello. And so I want to give congratulations to Stephanie Hoffman, who is the Executive Director of Open Doors, Kalamazoo, and the co-chair of our Housing Task Force. She was chosen in 2020 for the board of the city's Foundation for Excellence. She is the 4th Isaac leader to be chosen and an awesome, powerful voice of change. And now I have the honor of lifting up and introducing you to more of our valued team members. And so first we have Brother Ed Genesis, and he is the Community Engagement Coordinator. Brother Ed is an artist, a poet, a musician, organizer, entrepreneur, community organizer, racial healing practitioner, and co-director of Speak It Forward. And he is engaged in helping us with life-changing and systemic changing work. And he is also a part of the Gun Violence Prevention Task Force. And he'll be talking a little later in this presentation about all of the awesome work that was done in 2020. Next is Elizabeth Wolf, and she led another cohort of the Healing Whiteness for our white family members in Isaac and Friends of Isaac. Elizabeth identifies as an anti-racist, white, Ashkenazi, Jewish, politicized healer and somatic coach. And during these cohorts, we can just lift some of the tenets. So this series of cultural somatics coaching and practice sessions, they drew upon mindfulness techniques, nervous system regulation practices, somatic awareness practices, anti-racist identity development reflection, racial healing frameworks, capacity building around holding the tensions of responsibility and compassion. And again, this was for our white allies, those working towards being and deepening their white allyship. Next, we have Caleb, and he was a part of our first ever Walk, Run, Roll committee in 2018. He helped with the social media and technology management then and designed our event t-shirts. Now, as a college student in marketing, he is working as our marketing and communications intern. And so the awesome person who is flipping and handling and hosting us tonight is Caleb. Next is Charlotte, a social worker and anti-racism task force member. She is an artisan fan and has been sewing trendy aprons, African print-inspired aprons, and plus-size aprons and kitchen accessories. She participates in craft shows and also makes our beautiful thank you cards and other cards that you might receive in the mail. And she makes them from scratch and with love. And on your screen right there, you can see one of the beautiful thank you cards that she created. Next is Ashante. We are so thankful that she came from Michigan, from Florida. Her grandmother was a leader in Isaac, where she faithfully volunteered first and later became the anti-racism task force intern. She is studying psychology while minoring in criminal justice and headed to law school soon. She is a talented artist and poet as well. And next we have Irving. Irving is a gun violence prevention task force intern. After graduating from Western, he began working at El Concilio, and he's been a part of organizations such as the Latino Student Alliance and other social service organizations. He's committed to working towards helping and advocating for others. So it's awesome to have Irving. Next, we have Sister Kathy, who is currently working with Michigan United as a powerful organizer for the overdose crisis. She began working with Michigan United over 5 years ago because the organization provided a platform for communities like hers and to have a voice and to make a difference. Sister Kathy has worked on different campaigns such as the criminal justice reform and caring majority, and she was instrumental in going from door to door as we were organizing around the housing equity ordinance. It's awesome to have her. We also wanted to give a special thank you to our Isaac office staff members. So Sheila, who's our office manager, and also Chris, our data entry individual. And I'll say just a little bit more here. For Sheila, after earning her degree in accounting, she started working with Isaac, where she found her purpose in helping to serve her community. And she is also a gifted cosmetologist. And Chris, our awesome data entry person, has been committed and organized over the years around many task forces and social justice issues, including housing, public transportation, education, the Nurse-Family Partnership, and the gun violence prevention. And we also, in January 23rd, 2020, the executive committee members and the executive director held a bylaw session with consultant Damara West.
So Isaac wants to give a special thank you to Reverend Mason of Unity of Kalamazoo, Juliana from El Concilio, Rabbi Schichter from Temple B'nai Israel, Miriam from UUCC, Pastor Jess from the Wesley Foundation, and Deacon Sandra Westwood from UMC for leading a beautiful and powerful unity blessing at the Women's March in Kalamazoo in 2020 on January the 18th. And I want to just share the blessing that the ministers and leaders read, and it is as follows. We repent for our numerous oppressions, gatekeeping, exclusion, hatred, and lack of power sharing we have shown one another based on identity within this category of woman. We pray that your light may shine through us, that we may be all you created us to be. We commend to you all those, especially women who suffered physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually from domestic abuse, violence, discrimination, and oppression, and all who grieve from and with them. Provide for our children, advocates and guardian angels. Kindle in us hope for establishing new ways of dealing with differences. Let us combat our own bias and to suffer no more in silence. Let us feel empowered to reach out in love to one another of stepping out of our own comfort zone. Let us show mercy and connectedness as we oppose and refuse isolation, oppression, and discrimination. Let this Women's March today be a new beginning for unity, leadership, and collaboration. We thank Elisa Parker and all who are part of the organization of the Women's March and all of our clergy.
Hi, my name is Rick O'Million. I'm the co-chair of the Gun Violence Prevention Task Force. On February 16th, 2020, the 6th annual service of remembrance for victims of gun violence was held at Galilee Baptist Church. It was the third consecutive service held at Galilee and was organized by the Coalition for Common Ground, Kalamazoo Moms Demand Action, Isaac, including the Gun Violence Prevention Task Force, and the Kalamazoo branch of the NAACP. You can see the speakers at this afternoon service, Sunday afternoon service. There was also a powerful time for survivors of gun violence to say their name of their loved one taken by gun violence as a commemoration for them. Survivors were there from previous services, as well as new voices of survivors who came to say the names of their son, daughter, father, mother, sister, brother, co-worker, and neighbor. After the service at the Fellowship Hall at Galilee, community members mingled, talked, and remembered our loved ones. Tables were there displaying soul boxes, which are folded paper boxes displaying a picture of a loved one. It's part of the soulboxproject.org online. There was also information about the Be Smart program to promote safe and secure firearms storage to protect children. BeSmartForKids.org is that website. And there was a display for MomentsThatSurvive.org, a website of the Everytown Survivor Network, garnering the strength of gun violence survivors and their stories into a movement to end gun violence. And the League of Women Voters was there to get out the vote. I'm going to pass it on to Elder King.
Thank you. So the Northside Ministerial Alliance looked for greatness among greatness. They gave our very own, we can wave our hands and give a congratulations for the Reverend Dr. Otha Gary. The Community Service Award went to our very own Dr. Charlay Davis. And so we were certainly honored and privileged to be there and support her. And that was an amazing day. And certainly there is no one more deserving in our community amongst so many deserving folks. We feel, right, we have the best, and that is Dr. Davis. We want to congratulate her for the Otha Gilead Community Service Award given by the Northside Ministerial Alliance, and then her award also from NAACP that she received as well.
Thank you so very much, Elder King. So right now, I want to give a special thank you to Ana Garcia Ashley. As we were discussing leadership training in 2019 and 2020 as well, she introduced us to Reverend Katoya Roberts, who held awesome training sessions on Zoom for us. And this was actually before the government shut down due to the pandemic, because there was a snowstorm in Wisconsin. And so a special thank you to Ana for connecting us to Reverend Katoya. And right now, I'll hand this over to Dr. Regina, who helped to host one of the leadership training sessions.
Yeah, thank you, Charlay. So the leadership trainings were held to help members of the Isaac congregations to learn more about community organizing and the strategies, and to also practice one-on-ones. And UUCC was the proud host of the Saturday workshop. And as you can see, it was hybrid. We were there in person, but we worked with Dr. Katoya virtually, and it was a powerful training. We also want to give special thanks to Westwood because they hosted the Sunday workshop. And now I'll hand it over.
Thank you. And so in 2020, I had the privilege of being able to teach a 2-day course, and it was entitled Being a White Ally, Awareness, Healing, and Self-Transformation. And this was through WMU Ali. And so in these 2-day sessions, we had discussions, we had dialogues, we had self-discussion, self-reflections. We also watched an episode from Maude, and that was Lessons from Maude, and a practical look at where attempted allyship can do harm. And then we also talked about next steps and also ongoing work. And this, of course, was before the pandemic hit. So an awesome class of individuals, and a special thank you to Rick Welch, who helped to set up and get us all taken care of in the room.
And also in March, before the world started shutting down with COVID, in fact, the night before, we had a Strengths Finder workshop also at First Congregational Church. A Strength Finders workshop is where we concentrate on what our strengths are, not what our weaknesses are. So we identified those strengths, and then we just discussed how we might use those in our work for Isaac. It was a wonderful opportunity for us to explore our strengths and natural talents together, while better positioning us to use our gifts for justice. And here's some pictures.
Hello, my name is Deshante Collins. I am here to introduce myself. I am the Anti-Racism Task Force intern, and also Al Dixon. He is our ARTF co-chair, along with Emily Hazel, who is also our ARTF co-chair.
Good evening. During 2020, the Anti-Racist Task Force continued to work on their commitments from 2019 to create opportunities to transform community members, to build resistance against systemic racism, and to organize around policies that support racial justice and equity as we build the beloved community. The National Day of Racial Healing celebration on January 21st highlighted a key principle of the Anti-Racism Task Force, that we must address racism as we seek to right the disparities and the injustices of any sector of community life. This insight drives the task force focus on racial healing. Anti-Racist Task Force members participating in the National Day of Racial Healing with TRHT.
Each year, task forces conduct one-on-one conversations with leaders and community members to understand how other organizations are fighting racism and to learn how our task force could support them in their efforts. In 2020, we met with Vice Mayor Patrice Griffin and Ed Genesis, who told us about the housing equity ordinance that was being proposed at the City Commissioners meeting later that month. Vice Mayor Patrice encouraged task force members and other community members to speak up in support of the ordinance at the meeting, of which the Housing Task Force will talk more about later on this evening. For another one-on-one, we spoke with Kamal Rasby, the Health Equity Program Manager at the YWCA, who works for Cradle Kalamazoo on infant mortality reduction initiatives. We also spoke with Daniel Hamilton, the Community Affairs and Impact Coordinator at the YWCA, who informed us about the punitive educational policies that occur in schools and how those policies disproportionately impact students of color. We also spoke with Parker James, who had a conversation about his healthcare work focused on building awareness about the Medicare for All Act and garnering local support for the movement. And finally, Our last one-on-one conversation of the year was with Adrian Vasquez from El Concilio, who spoke about the everyday barriers that our Latinx community members face, specifically regarding education and healthcare.
In 2020, we committed to begin to address the policies and systems that and continue to perpetrate racism. The Anti-Racism Task Force worked with a number of community partners to facilitate discussions with players in the criminal justice system and with attorneys, judges, public safety, and officials in our city, county, and township around reflection, community healing, anti-racism, transparency, and relationship building. Bugs in our brain, changing the world by changing our thinking. Implicit bias workshop. More photos from the implicit bias workshop.
Good evening, this is Stephanie. How did we get the housing equity ordinance passed? First, we listened to directly impacted community members and leaders, ideas about policy changes needed in 2018. Then we chose the compelling housing equity proposal brought to us by Truth, Racial Healing and Transformation, written by now Vice Mayor Patrice Griffin, based on analyzing how widespread her family's experience of discrimination is in Kalamazoo. Then we presented the problem at the Isaac public meeting in October of 2018. Even 6,000 new affordable homes won't solve homelessness if discrimination is still legal. And we presented the solution at the Isaac 2018 public meeting, a new public policy to end discrimination.
We spoke at the City Commission meeting on February 20 of 2020. This is part of the long public comment line for the housing equity ordinance. We merged the housing work with the Truth, Racial Healing and Transformation with ours and became the Isaac and the TRHT Housing Task Force.
TRHT created this powerful fact sheet and action list. We sent them out widely in March 2020. We are the ones we've been waiting for. In April 2020, we sent out this YouTube video of Vice Mayor Patrice Griffin, TRHT Director Shalana Lewis, and Isaac Executive Director Dr. Charlay Davis, explaining the need for the proposed local housing equity ordinance. We asked everyone to give input to the city.
In June, we sent out a choice of 3 letters and asked everybody to sign at least one and add your voice to support the housing equity ordinance letter that we wrote, a Dear Landlords letter we wrote specially for white allies to sign, and the city's invitation to share feedback on the ordinance, because we knew that we needed to give the Kalamazoo City Commissioners the community support that they need in order to pass the housing equity ordinance.
Then, September 8th, the housing equity ordinance passed unanimously. Yes, won't he do it? Yes, he will. Bravo to Vice Mayor Patrice Griffin. Bravo to the Kalamazoo City Commission. Bravo to the Isaac and TRHT Housing Task Force. Thank you to everyone who supports Isaac. the power of all of us coming together as an interfaith community organizing network with so many congregations and organizations working together to build the beloved community. Our community is transforming.
Then, after the ordinance passed, we kept getting support. We co-sponsored restricted housing opportunities, a conversation about redlining, which brought together estate and banking professionals and facilitated by Erase and Fair Housing Center.
Hi, this is Rick O'Million again, the co-chair of the Gun Violence Prevention Task Force. The task force held our first meeting on November 26, 2019, to talk about the sequence of the Gun Violence Prevention Task Force work over the next 2 years. And on January 28, 2020, we held our second meeting with a visitor, Reverend Rachel Lonberg of the People's Church of Kalamazoo and a member of the Kalamazoo Foundation for Excellence. She asked us for our input about how the FFE could support our task force work through their foundation. We talked about the need for support for programs for youth, such as mentoring programs, mental health and trauma services for the youth, especially as victims of gun violence. We discussed the importance of helping those involved in the violence and also those affected by the gun violence, and about support for existing violence interruption programs in Kalamazoo. At our next meeting on February 28th, in our first one-to-one interviews as a task force, we talked with Captain Stacy Ledbetter and Judge Curtis Bell. Judge Bell talked about his commitment to juvenile justice, including mental health and equity issues for youth. He expressed concerns about systemic racism and lack of support for youth at home and in community programs. Captain Stacy Ledbetter talked about her role as a retired KDPS officer in addressing problems affecting police and community relations. In her consulting roles now, she is working on promoting racial healing and equity in law, justice, and policing matters. Her work in LPACT, Advocates and Leaders for Police and Community Trust, and as a trainer of active police officers is part of her mission now. Then the pandemic came to disrupt how we all do business and our activism. We all met on Zoom and had less in-person contact, and it changed the face and scope of gun violence in our community too. A quote from March 22nd, 2021, Public Media Network summed it up very well. Gun violence is not a new problem, but in 2020, the problem looked different. It looked like houses riddled with bullet holes, residents ducking down near street, facing windows, and families couch surfing and living in cars after the death of their breadwinner. In 2020, there were 13 gun-related homicides in Kalamazoo. Kalamazoo Public Safety reported over 75 non-fatal shootings and over 375 assaults with firearms that year. Kalamazoo's increase in gun violence began finding its way into local media by midsummer 2020. At our April 28th task force, in this slide, fully in Zoom meeting mode and trying to plan GVP actions while in lockdown, we talked about gun violence prevention legislation with then State Representative John Hoadley and State Senator Sean McCann. Sherry Brockway of the YWCA talked about domestic violence issues and gun violence. The lockdown had forced many women in abusive situations to remain there with less help and more danger than before the lockdown. She related that increased crisis calls to the YWCA in Kalamazoo showed that domestic violence is on the rise in Kalamazoo, and the presence of a gun, even as an implied threat, increases the danger.
As Rick stated, in 2020, there was an increase in community gun violence. We came together as a task force in a community to find ways to reduce gun violence and support the families directly impacted. With the help of the task force members and community, we were able to provide food, gift cards, toys, clothes, and other resources to 13 of the 14 families who lost loved ones to gun violence last year. Next slide, please. So we partner with Moms Demand Action, TRHT, GVI, Arts Council, and Kalamazoo Black Artists to organize a walk for the victims of community gun violence. The purpose was to take a stance against gun violence and show the community what we have lost. The mural was designed by local Black artists to lift up the victims of gun violence. Local elected officials, survivors, and community leaders and members shared words of encouragement and a call to action. It was a very powerful event. The mural will be permanently displayed at Lacrone Park.
During the community outreach, one of the things that we thought about was, how do we really reach the youth? And so a few of us came together, myself, Mr. Don Hempfield, Mr. Johnny Berry, and Mr. Sam Hughes, thought about a way, thought about a way to really reach the youth in a positive, uplifting way, but also a way to where they can learn. So we did a 3-on-3 basketball game where Isaac came out, sponsored one of the teams, also NAACP, and a lot of other organizations. Miss Wendy Fields' NAACP team actually won, and that was August 29th, 2020, and the next one is slated for August 28th this year, where we will come back and have a way to reach out to the youth. We also decided to team up with a lot of different outreach groups within the community, including GVI, Speak It Forward, Ms. Gwendolyn Hooker, Hope Through Navigation, Isaac, Michigan United, and just so many others to reach directly impacted communities, our directly impacted community due to gun violence. And so we hit a lot of directly impacted areas, such as stores on the north side and also North Street, where the fire happened with Miss Lockett, with the property that happened over there. The purpose for this was not only to combat gun violence, but to show that the community can stand together during an endemic while still combating a pandemic, which are completely two different things. It was a struggle, but we came together. As you can see in the picture, a lot of us had our mask on. We still practiced social distancing. It was still very new for us all at that time, but the community came together, stood together, and we had positive results through it all. Also, a way to reach when the pandemic started becoming a lot more real for us, and a lot of us had to sit at home. We took a lot of the outreach videos I did, and I thought it would be a creative way to do some outreach by creating a video and include Isaac, Moms Demand Action, Kalamazoo, and also hear from directly impacted people such as Miss Melanie. And that's how we did that. Miss Melody Coleman, I'm sorry. And so that was the video for the anti-gun violence. And it was just all continued outreach and just a way to combat the gun violence, which has been very real, very sad, and very tragic.
The group violence intervention had started back in 2011 out of the Holy Ground campaign, and we reached out to impacted groups and community members who voiced their concerns about the impact of violence in Kalamazoo. After a devastating summer of homicides and a rise in shootings, community members shared being tired of the loss of the shooting victim's life unearthed, and the loss of shooter's life to prison, as well as the lasting impact gun violence brought to our community. Isaac brought National Network for Safe Communities founder David M. Kennedy to Kalamazoo in 2012 for a banquet and reached out to partners to begin implementation of Kennedy's strategy. Group Violence Intervention Kalamazoo is a community-led strategy, a collaboration between community, law enforcement, and social service providers designed to decrease gun violence, address trauma, and reduce societal barriers in our community. We expanded our team this year, and we planned for a roundtable style intervention in March of 2020, and that was derailed by the pandemic. And so we had to get creative on how we could continue the work. We began holding individual interventions with evaluations, and we held a forum for probation and parole to explain what GVI is, and community-led home visits. The War Room was created in the Urban Alliance building, and it is a place where members of the community, some people that are impacted by the violence, and some who may have committed some of the violence in the past, come together and are able to get support and are shown love, and that the community does care for them and wants to keep them safe, alive, and out of prison.
So we introduced you all last year to our dedicated GVI coordinator, Brother Michael Wilder, who worked tirelessly in 2020 in collaboration with other community members and also other community organizations working on gun violence. In 2020, he added a team of awesome street outreach workers. And I want to go ahead and lift up Pastor Esto, who is the Associate Director of Outreach through GVI, and he works at Urban Alliance. And I want to just read a part of this quote here that he says, I remember the times in my life where I was broken, lost, and without direction, but there was someone that continually showed up in my life, someone who loved and cared for me. And that is what we want to be at the center of GVI. That is what we're working and striving to do.
We also, at the beginning of the pandemic, we also were able to have a GVI dinner with new street outreach workers. It was right before things heated up with the pandemic, but we were able to get together and have good fellowship and get to know each other. It was a great night. Soon after that, we wouldn't be able to be meeting together in these ways. So we're thankful for that time.
This slide right here is what Wendy mentioned, an individual intervention. And what we were trying to do after we moved away from the large call-ins was to have an individual intervention that had a village approach. And these are just some of the individuals who have leaned in to sit in as community members. We've had a number of them. The picture on the right is a photo, a follow-up from an individual intervention, a dinner that we had, which we call a support dinner. These are connected to evaluations from the individuals who sit in these individual interventions, because we always want to learn and grow and change and evolve and make it better and more impactful and more culturally competent. For me, the ones that stood out were the ones where individuals were sharing about the systemic issues and how those impacted them and really were obstacles in them being able to live their best life. Those who were sharing the heart to heart, the things that they had been through, they had experienced, and even the tears that fell, and some fell from my eyes as well. And so those were the individual interventions. And again, always learning and growing and making them better. And then this is a picture of some of the new street outreach workers. And has a coordinator, street outreach workers, and then Chief Boyson. And then I'll hand this over to Wendy.
Two of our new street outreach workers are Yefencio Harris, also known as Big B, and he and Michael have been connected for some time. And Yefencio is a part of Peace During War, which is a nonprofit that he and Michael founded. Once enemies, we now work together to save youth from losing their lives to the streets through education and empowerment. And we're really proud to have Big B as part of our group. Also, Pastor Michael Stewart, an elder 2002, and he's currently the senior pastor of Vanguard North Church. Pastor Stewart has been our chief cook most of the time at our Peace Smoke events, which we'll talk about a little bit later.
And next, I want to lift Brother Michael Monroe, and I'll just pull a little bit of his quote here. And he said, through prayer, my mother was a praying woman, and in devotion, I am still here. I was told at a very young age that I wouldn't live to see the age of 21, and that was many years ago, okay? And I am a living testimony of my past life, and an awesome individual, street outreach worker. And then Brother Rod, I was introduced to the world of drugs by someone I considered a friend. I served roughly 19 years in both state and federal prison. Now I counsel, coach, and inspire youth to be thinkers and productive members of their communities. So happy to have both of our brothers, all of our brothers. And also we were able to create a few new positions, Isaac community interns this year and last year, of course. So Brother Detron Walker, Brother Alejandro, Brother Jordan, and then Brother Kino. And these are young men who have been directly impacted by the criminal justice system. And they have a love for their community, and they want to make a change in their community and give back and talk to youth in the community. We're also working to expand the GVI community working team. And one of our community team members, Elisa Watkins Monroe, she said, I'm a voice of change for our youth and community. I listen to find solutions. Any change, even a change for the better, comes with discomfort, but to accept change comes with peace. We're so happy to have Elisa, Sister Lisa.
The GVI War Room was created by our street outreach workers and Michael Wilder. It gives folks a place to come and dialogue, speak their truth, give the love that the street outreach workers have for them. It's a time for them to get motivation, to give their stories and really share what they're going through. And the street outreach workers are able to, offer them ways to make change in lives. And sometimes it's just that showing of love and empathy that they really need. The Peace Smoke events, as I spoke of earlier, Peace Smoke is barbecue grills, sparks, and candles, and that is to replace guns. And we have had a couple of these events and a couple last year as well. And it's just a time to fellowship with others. We just had one on Saturday on the east side, and we were able to have folks from the neighborhood. We offer food and fellowship, and it's just a really great time. We're starting to do some walks, marches along with that, in support of putting the guns down, and to really show that the community needs folks to stop the violence.
And in October for Halloween, we were so very happy to be a co-sponsor for El Concilio's Trunk and Treat. It was a safe event, well organized, and we got to see all of the beautiful children in their costumes enjoying Halloween. So we were so happy to be able to be a co-sponsor.
So as you can see, Isaac has been really, really busy this year. But during the stay-at-home order, Dr. Charlay asked Isaac clergy leaders to participate in a time of encouragement, to provide recordings, to read a poem or a scripture or a passage that helps to get others through challenging times. Our goal was to encourage one another, to connect and to draw strength through these difficult times. And so the following names and affiliations, I'll share those with you. Miriam Khan from Kalamazoo Islamic Center, Sophia Ovalle Lopez from El Concilio, Dr. Carolyn Heineman, Juliana Hefner from El Concilio, Dr. Regina Nelson from UUCC, Apostle Valerie Cunningham from Empowerment Center, Joan Hawkshurst from Temple B'nai Israel, Miriam Epskamp from UUCC, our Deacon Karen McDonald from St. Barnabas and St. Mark's, Joe Brown Woods of Unity of Kalamazoo, Reverend G. Ludwig McCarthy from UUCC, Elder Doug King from Grace Covenant Ministries, Dr. Randall Warren from St. Luke's Episcopal, Reverend Rachel Lomberg for People's Church, and yours truly, Reverend Jocelyn Mason of Unity of Kalamazoo, Maliha Raza Khan from Kalamazoo Islamic Center, Adrian Velasquez from El Concilio, Rabbi Schichter from Temple B'nai Israel, Wendy Flora, Natalie Oliveria, Nick the drummer, Elder Dorla Bonner, Juliana Hefner, and Sophia Avalle. Just to name a few of the many videos that inspired people during these troubling times.
Thank you. So in the summer of 2020, a group of us were talking about the increase in gun violence and how the community violence was impacting us. And we were talking with Shalana Lewis, who was the director of TRHT. And as we were talking and just trying to discuss solutions and thinking about what we could do, there was this acknowledgement that there were not resources there for us as Black and Brown community members to help deal with the trauma that we were experiencing. And Brother Ed will talk more about that trauma soon in this presentation. And so I just wanted to give a special shout out to Sister Shalana Lewis for taking this conversation, this acknowledgement, and then going to Kalamazoo Community Foundation and asking and finding that piloted, giving a proposal for that piloted funding so that we would have resources for what we now call the Black and Brown Therapy Collective. And Gabby De La Cruz is our wonderful program coordinator. We have an advisory board of Isaac Rooted, TRHT, Urban Alliance, Fire, Hope Through Navigation, Griffin Place, and also El Concilio. And you can visit that website if you know of anybody who is in need. The wonderful thing about this is even if someone does not have insurance, they can access culturally competent therapists, Black and Brown therapists.
I think that's the perfect segue. The notes kind of tripped me up the last time, so I'm gonna just talk to y'all. This was an opportunity to explore exactly what Dr. Charlay just lifted up, and it's a trip, and it's a trauma reducing informed practices event. Being directly impacted myself, my father was killed by gun violence, and I myself carried a gun and was expelled from public high schools in Gary, Indiana for carrying a gun at 16 years old. this gave us an opportunity to explore the trauma behind why do we carry guns? Why do the youth have guns? What is actually contributing to the violence? And what we learned was that trauma contributes to a lot of this. And if we don't have trauma reducing informed practices in our community, then the trauma will continue. So I got a phone call from Mr. Don Hemfield that said he attended an event with Dr. Jess Clemens. I immediately called Dr. Charlay, said, sis, can we do something like this here? She said, absolutely, Isaac will support that. And that was the beginning. We could go to the next slide. We had an opportunity to have an amazing panel, including Mr. Rick Emilian, who's part of the gun violence task force, anti-gun violence task force with Isaac, also with Vice Chair County Commissioner Tammy Ray. We had Mrs. Ebony Hemfield. Next slide. We had Mr. Dontre Hemfield, who actually was the one who called me. That is the guy. We had Dr. Sandra Medina, who's a trauma surgeon at Bronson. And we also had Pastor Esto, who you all saw earlier, who's a part of the GVI outreach, as well as Urban Alliance. And everybody offered real testimony, touching testimony. If you have not witnessed or had a chance to see It's a Trip, it has been uploaded on YouTube, I believe. And you should just really hear the testimony from real community as we fight to lift up. There are other ways to try to end gun violence, and that's It's a Trip. And thank you.
Thank you so much, Brother Ed. Thank you. So in 2020, that was supposed to be our year to hold our walk, run, roll. And of course, however, because of the pandemic, we could not gather safely. And so during this pandemic, this was also a time where we saw an increase in blatant systemic racism nationwide and killing of Black and Brown folks. And so in thinking about those things, we were talking and we created the virtual Journey to DC for Racial Justice. And that was a way for us to organize around anti-racism, and then through this platform, be able to connect during a time when we were supposed to stay apart due to public health. And so I will right now pass this over to Kara, and he will explain how people engaged in this virtual event.
Yeah, I'll just highlight a few key points from our Journey to DC. All that participated in our Journey to DC were able to watch daily inspirational videos. They were able to upload short videos describing why they were moving for racial justice and what their personal commitment for racial justice is. They had the opportunity to log in their miles, distance, or steps. And after the journey was completed, you could watch other community members participate in their journey. You could share your journey on social media as well. And our most important ask was that everyone continue the journey for social justice. A few of our 38 daily inspirational readings were done by Elder King, Bishop Daniel Cunningham, Apostle Valerie Cunningham, Kamala Kaziva, Irving, Quintero, Gervasio, retired Captain Vic Ledbetter, retired Captain Stacy Randolph, Reverend Julie Klein, Dr. John Welch and Anna Garcia Ashley, Me Moore, Jenna Douglas, Lisa Kaiser, Manuel Bernardo, Hermano Jr. from Erase, Reverend Janet and Reverend Jerry Duggins, Destiny and Dion Bowens, Elena Morales Hill, Matt Smith, Sandy Berry Loken, Pastor Barry Petrucci, Karuma Masumira, and Dr. Charlene Davis.
Thank you, Kara. And so also in addition to the daily inspirations, there was a section where individuals, after they moved for justice, however many times they did, they could log in, they could upload a picture, and we really asked folks to talk about why they were moving for racial justice, whether they were a person of color, whether they were a white ally. In your heart, why are you moving for racial justice? We wanted folks to share that. And these are just some of the examples of why folks said that they were moving for justice. And I also wanted to just give a special shout out to Caleb and also Kara, who designed our Journey to DC for Racial Justice t-shirts. And this was, everybody is masked, we're being safe, but we facilitated a t-shirt pickup, and a special thank you to Dr. Pat and First Presbyterian Church.
So we were very excited for our Isaac virtual public meeting in October of 2020. It was an amazing turnout. And so we had over 5,000 unique people who tuned in to the stream. We increased subscribers by 10%. We averaged 200 to 300 viewers and peaked at just under 500. And over 400 comments were made throughout the total stream. And also to date, we have had 3,500 views on YouTube video of this meeting. So what an amazing meeting.
And next one.
I'm wondering if Andrew is on mute.
At the Isaac public meeting in October 2020, the Housing Task Force passed. That Isaac proposed at our public meeting 2 years ago passed the Kalamazoo City Commission unanimously. Thank you to Vice Mayor Patrice Griffin, who proposed this transformational ordinance to Isaac over 2 years ago and has nurtured it ever since. Thank you for using your family personal experience of housing discrimination to improve the way the system works for many more people. Vice Mayor Patrice Griffin thanked the task force, the city staff, and city commissioners for supporting this ordinance.
And now, because of the Housing Equity Ordinance, people applying for housing can no longer be automatically rejected if they have a housing voucher or an eviction or conviction on their record. This housing ordinance is necessary because nearly half of all children in the United States have one parent with a criminal record. And because if you get an eviction filing on your record, even if you're not evicted, and because we have such a long history of redlining, racially restrictive covenants, and other discrimination, that although Kalamazoo County is only 11% Black, 60% of the county's homeless population is Black, and over half are women and school-aged children.
But the Housing Equity Ordinance only applies to the city of Kalamazoo. So we asked Kalamazoo Township, Portage, and Comstock to adopt their own housing equity ordinances. All of the elected leaders gave us an enthusiastic yes as a response. The housing equity ordinance is huge progress, yet by itself, it doesn't solve the need for more housing in our county. So our second ask was to everyone present. We need your support for the Kalamazoo County housing proposal at the very end of your November 3rd ballot. Even though Vote Yes for Kids millage has helped 500 families, there are still 700 individuals homeless in Kalamazoo County, and that millage ends in 2021. The Homes for All proposal will create housing options of all kinds for people who are working, retired, and on disability all over the county. We asked public officials, candidates, community leaders, will you promote Homes for All and encourage voters to vote yes on the Kalamazoo County housing proposal? All of the candidates responded yes.
And then on November 2020, hallelujah, the voters countywide supported Homes for All. This was a partnership of many different agencies working together. But the co-chair of the Homes for All campaign was Stephanie Hoffman, our Housing Task Force co-chair and executive director of Open Doors Kalamazoo, along with Portage City Council member Chris Burns and Kalamazoo County Public Housing Commission Chair David Artley.
Oh, I know him.
Huge thanks to them and to the County Board of Commissioners who put Homes for All on the ballot, and to leaders from all the agencies who worked for it to pass. Valentine's Day 2022, the new housing dollars become available. Woo!
We are committed to a racial healing. Our history impacts our present, and we continue to see systemic racism threaded within the practices and the policies of our country. Our local community and our institutions, we believe we must work together to dismantle systemic racism, and we seek partnership with our public officials and law enforcement to extend this work with us.
During the public meeting, the Anti-Racism Task Force asked certain questions, and these are our county commissioners and candidates that said yes to the question. To deepen your impact of being a public official working with an anti-racist lens, do you commit to attend a public official workshop that focuses on anti-racism, equity, empowerment, and accountability, hosted by Isaac? These are also our city commissioners who agreed to the same exact acts as the previous slide. These are our candidates for state representative, 60th and 61st district, and our U.S. Congress 6th district that also agreed and said yes to the question asked previously. And also our county treasurer candidates also agreed to a public official workshop that was also agreed upon by the previous 4 groups. Our county clerk candidates were asked a question that they said yes to. As part of the Kalamazoo County Apportionment Commission, do you commit to work to end local gerrymandering? That is to ensure a fair district lines and to work to end systemic voter suppression in Kalamazoo. And our Kalamazoo Department of Public Safety and the City of Kalamazoo agreed and said yes to, do you commit to work with the Anti-Racism Task Force, October 2020, October 2021, to build a culture of trust and legitimacy between our law enforcement, criminal justice, and our community, as exemplified in Pillar 1 of the President's Task Force on 21st Century Policing. This would include collaborating on the following: by sharing, educating, acknowledging, participating through local anti-racism and healing work together. Our county sheriff's office candidate also agreed to sharing, educating, acknowledging, and participating as well. Our prosecutor's office and the Kalamazoo Defender Office agreed and said yes to, do you commit to attending a cultural competency workshop focused on working with immigrant community members facilitated by El Concilio? And the Kalamazoo Defender Office also agreed to, do you commit to give a workshop or presentation about your work for indigent community members? As the year progresses, we are still working with our public officials and our commissioners on the acts that they have agreed on. This work continues to help build relationships through an anti-racist lens for our community. Ed?
Yeah, I'm zoning. Sorry. The Gun Violence Prevention Task Force got many yeses from law enforcement leaders, official candidates, prosecutor on participating in strengthening mutual trust, our capacity to communicate openly, effectively. This is cutting off for me, I'm sorry. All right. The Gun Violence Prevention Task Force got many yes responses from law enforcement leaders, officials, candidates, and the prosecutor on participating in strengthening mutual trust, building our capacity to communicate openly and effectively, and allowing the community to work more collaboratively with law enforcement and others for safety, health, and welfare for everyone. Forgive me.
During the 2020 public meeting, Sheriff Rick Fuller, Sheriff candidate Shannon Bagley, and Township Manager Dexter Mitchell all said yes to committing to make their agency's annual report easily available to our local community by uploading onto your online website, as well as offering opportunities for asking questions.
Also at that meeting, Chief Vernon Coakley, Kalamazoo Public Department Safety, agreed to attend and view the It's a Trip that Ed referenced earlier. We asked, do you commit to attend, view the It's a Trip Trauma Reducing Informed Practice panel and keynote virtual event that focuses on trauma and violence on October 30th at 6 p.m. and to debrief with the Isaac Gun Violence Prevention Task Force? And he agreed.
During that meeting, Prosecutor Getting said yes when asked, do you commit to monthly meetings with impacted neighbor representatives who are living in neighborhoods with high gun violence to discuss and brainstorm around decreasing gun violence?
We also want to send a heartfelt love and gratitude to our awesome survivors, Miss Melody Coleman, Miss Gwendolyn Lewis, and Dr. Pat Stromsta, and say thank you to them for sharing their personal stories of how gun violence has personally impacted their lives. And thank you to Irving for helping with the recording and editing.
So ironically, I think I look forward to all of the presentations and the slides, except for this one. This is a tragedy of gun violence. Didn't quite know who could present this because Trevante was so close to all of us, but we want to remember Trevante Brown McFerrin. He said, Isaac is a respectable, responsible, caring group of people who helped to lead Kalamazoo in the right direction. They have also helped me to get on the road of success. Again, we actually met Trevante as a high school student. And so Trevante was tragically killed by gun violence. And so Trevante was a friend, a son, a brother. He was a father, a husband, just all the things that Trevante was to all of us. He was an inspiration. He was a shining star. He was full of potential, full of life. And he was tragically, his life was tragically taken too early, obviously, through gun violence. These are just pictures of some of the time we spent with Trevante. So this is just a portion. We were asked to share some thoughts about Trevante. This is just a portion of something that I did for Trevante, and simply says, what happens when the death of this young man raises a new fight within you? What happens when the inspiration and life of this young man ignites an inner desire? What happens when the life and memory of this young man ignites a new passionate fire? What happens when the life of this young man breaks your heart and everything within you? What happens when you now realize that now more than ever is that we've got work to do? Trevante will forever be missed, but never forgotten. We love Trevante and are honored to be able to share this time with you all to talk about such a special young man.
Thank you, Elder King. We also were able to participate in racial affinity work in 2020 and also hosted workshops. So TRHT Isaac and the NAACP has and continues to have a Black affinity group, El Concilio, the Brown affinity group. We had the Healing Whiteness cohort, which was already mentioned, as well as the One Day White affinity group that was led by Elizabeth Wolf. And then also towards the end of the year, we started conversations about the Jewish and Black Healing and Collaboration group. We also, in thinking about the hosted workshops, we were so happy to be able to have the History of Law and Racism workshop facilitated by retired Captain Stacy Ledbetter of the Black and Blue Networking and Consulting, LLC, and that was for Isaac Partners. And then we also hosted the Brave Spaces workshop facilitated by the YWCA for probation and parole agents here in Kalamazoo.
In 2020, Casey Ready For celebrated their 10th anniversary, and they gave a special thank you to Isaac for their origins. This work was started by our early childhood and education task force, and they brought together the partners in the vision in 2008 for Kalamazoo County Ready Fours, whose goal is fully accessible, high quality pre-kindergarten for every 3 and 4-year-old in Kalamazoo County through collaboration with public and private providers.
We also were so happy that we were able to participate in voter engagement efforts with our NAACP, and a special thank you to Ms. Wendy for facilitating that partnership, and a special thank you to all of our wonderful canvassers. So as we know, in 2020, that was a year of many things, including concerns about physical safety as white supremacy was becoming more blatant. And so our friends at the Fetzer Institute, they reached out and they asked if we had any Isaac clergy and leaders that could offer words of peace, words of unity, words of solidarity around the 2020 election. And so we want to just give a special thank you to those who created a video, election videos of peace, unity, and solidarity. So thank you to Elder Doug King, to Adrian Vasquez, to Rabbi Schicker, to Elder Dorla Coleman Bonner, to Reverend Rachel Lomberg, and then to Malia Raza Khan. Thank you, thank you, thank you. We also want to lift up the appreciation breakfast to go with Miss Pat. We unfortunately could not host our in-person donor breakfast, which is usually in the basement of St. Luke's, and we get to use the beautiful space and the beautiful St. Luke's china. But we were so happy to have Miss Pat of Davis Delectables and Designs to be able to cater delicious breakfast or brunch meals to go.
The past year has been one with many challenges and concerns, and many of us spend time worrying about our health and well-being, as well as the health and safety of our loved ones. To help with our own mental wellness, the Isaac Executive Board reached out to Kama Mitchell, the CEO and founder of Rooted, for a reflective year retreat.
So I apologize. I'm still trying to get myself together from the Trevante slides. So our virtual friends and family hour, this year Isaac could not host our end of the year Isaac Donor Breakfast due to the pandemic. However, on December 16th, we gathered on Zoom to hear words of encouragement from clergy and leaders and testimonials from Isaac family members. Some of the speakers for that, retired Captain Stacy Ledbetter, Caleb Bider and Teresa Outs, Coach Dick Schultz, Deacon Pat Benj and Reverend Mike Wood, Adrian Vasquez, and our very own Ashante Collins.
At the end of 2019, you might remember we were jubilant that we surpassed the $50,000 necessary for our endowment to generate interest income for the first time. Just 1 year later, at the end of 2020, our endowment had more than doubled to $125,000. Thank you to everyone for your amazing support for our work to get our local policies and practices infused with love, hope, equity, and abundance.
So in 2019, we did not know that 2020 would bring all that it did, including this pandemic. But we are so very grateful for the support of all of our grantors and our sponsors who invested in our beloved community work and in our efforts to increase our capacity in the work that we do and the impact that we make. So a very special thank you to Stryker Johnston Foundation, the Harold and Grace Upjohn Foundation, the Irving S. Gilmore Foundation, the Kalamazoo Community Foundation, and Schwab Charitable. We also want to thank our Journey to DC for Racial Justice sponsors, those businesses and organizations, Erase, CARES, and then Advia Credit Union. Thank you.
So we just want you to be able to view our donors list. Just want to recognize the names that are in bold are major donors. The names with asterisks are GEMS, those, and that stands for those who give every month. And so we won't read all of these, but we just want you to be able to see who our amazing donors are, who contribute to the work that we do. Okay, so wow, isn't that an amazing list? That's just awesome. You see our just pie chart here for our 2020 revenue. Again, the bulk of our revenue comes from grants, a little over 76%. Contracts, merchandise, and other 2.84%. Our individual contributions and special donations, a little over 11%. Our annual event and fundraising, 5.24%, and our membership dues, 4.3%. So, our expenses, the bulk of our expenses go for our task forces and GVI work is 35%, and our office communications, 8.6%, the contractual services and organization development, 6.2%. Our events and resident engagement, 11.80%. Our anti-racism workshops and training, 5.80%. Our journey to DC and fundraising, 1.70%. Dues and other expenses, just 0.42%. And operations are 30.08% for our expenses. We just want to give a special thank you to Amy Peterson and Rick Johnson for taking many of those beautiful photos that you saw. Davis Delectables and Designs for providing the delicious food at our events. Mark, our web person, for bringing our Journey to DC platform to life. Caleb Iter for creating this awesome presentation and for helping us navigate this virtual world successfully. So many of our events, thank you, Caleb. To Toby, Hannah Davies, to our own Dr. Charlotte Davis, and whoever this other person is. And to our president, myself. So I just want to take this opportunity, as I typically do, to say I think we have the best executive director that there is, and we want to thank Dr. Charlotte Davis for her continued leadership through a very tumultuous time, through this pandemic, through all the challenges that Isaac has faced. She has kept Isaac at the forefront in our community. She has helped us to continue the work that we are doing. And so we just are grateful and blessed to have the gift of Dr. Charlotte Davis to lead this work that Isaac does. So you can wave your hands, if you will, and let's clap and just be grateful for our leader and Dr. Charlotte Davis. So I'm not quite sure what, are there questions or comments? No.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm sorry, Dr. R. If there's anybody who has questions or comments, feel free to say that now. We finished earlier than we thought. So we just want to give folks that opportunity if anybody needs clarification, questions, and then we want to hand this over to Dr. R to close us out.
Okay. I will do our closing reading. We Are One by Hope Johnson. We are one, a diverse group of proudly kindred spirits, here not by coincidence, but because we choose to journey together. We are active and proactive. We care deeply. We live our love as best we can. We are one, working, eating, laughing, playing, singing, storytelling, sharing, and rejoicing, getting to know each other, taking risks, opening up, questioning, seeking, searching, trying to understand, struggling, making mistakes, paying attention, asking questions, listening, living our answers, learning to love our neighbors, learning to love ourselves, apologizing and forgiving with humility, and being forgiven through grace, creating the beloved community together. We are one. May it be so.
Thank you, Dr. Regina. So that concludes our annual meeting for 2020. Thank you all for sharing this time with us, for engaging in this work with us. We are honored to work with such a dynamic, awesome group of individuals. Kalamazoo is an amazing place because of you all. And so thank you for your love. Thank you for your support and your encouragement. And we just want to say, Dr. Davis, are we good?
Yes, we are good. We are good. Much love, everybody, and appreciate